Hello everybody, and welcome to today's International Workers' Memorial Day event at the Portsmouth Workers' Memorial in Victoria Park in Portsmouth. My name's John Woods. I'm the chair of the Portsmouth Trades Council, or the Trade Union Council. For people who don't know what the Trades Council is, it's a long-standing body, over 100 years old. I'll just let the cathedral finish. And we're here to remember all the key workers who died as a result of coronavirus. The theme of the day is to remember the dead, but to fight for the living. And it's funny how we remember now who the key workers are. Not funny, ironic in a way. We've always known nurses and doctors were frontline key workers and essential, but now it's become increasingly recognised that it's the hospital porters, the cleaners, the social care workers in residential homes, in home care. It's the teachers, the teaching assistants, the caretakers, and all the cleaners. It's the transport workers, people who drive the buses, run the trains. It's the shop workers, people who stock the shelves, who transport the goods, who run the warehouses, who keep our streets clean, who sterilise things. These are the essential workers in society. These are the most important people. And when they die and are killed as a result of coronavirus, we have to remember them. That's why the trade unions have called for a minute's silence at 11 o'clock today, and a lot of us did that. My union, Unison, RC, Royal College of Nursing, Royal College of Midwives, NEU, Unite, all the other unions have backed that. But in Portsmouth, we've always had a ceremony at 12 o'clock here at the Workers' Memorial. Every year, for years and years, and we've had this memorial over a few years now. And we thought it would be good to commemorate as usual at 12 o'clock. There were already flowers down here when I arrived this morning. Obviously, it's a social distance demonstration. I'm here on my own with a photographer here from the news. And at the 12th stroke of the Guildhall bells, I will lay the flowers at the war memorial, and we'll have a minute's silence. And then I wanted to say a few other words, because the theme, as I said, is not only to remember the dead, all the people we've lost, and unfortunately all the people we are still to lose, but also to campaign for health and safety and fight for the future so we can protect workers wherever they are from coronavirus, and to highlight the health and safety. And that's a very important part of Workers' Memorial Day. And I'm very pleased that Boris Johnson and the government are honouring it. But the issue is this is a trade union event, trade unionists and workers, not only in this country but around the world. This is an internationally recognised day. And it's a privilege and an honour to be here. And I'm pleased that this, of all days, of all years, we're able to mark Workers' Memorial Day here in the park, albeit under very difficult circumstances, unusual circumstances, but nevertheless very, very important. So I'll wait for the Guildhall to chime. And then after the minute's silence, I wanted to say a few words as well, because I think it's important that we map out what we as trade unions and workers need to do in the future as well to prevent more people dying. Okay, we've had the minute's silence, and I just wanted to read out a few words. Today, we remember the dead, but we fight for the living. But in order to do this, we need to recognise now what's gone wrong. It's no good waiting for an inquiry down the road like we've seen with the inquiry into the Grenfell Tower fire. We cannot wait to learn the lessons. We need to learn them now, hold people to account, and save lives. I have to say it, this government has blood on its hands. Very many people have died unnecessarily because of how this government has handled the coronavirus crisis and because of government decisions over the last 10 years. Insufficient and inadequate PPE, insufficient testing and contact tracing, inconsistent application of the rules about social distancing in favour of bosses and the wealthy. In lockdown, we are certainly not in it all together. The rich ride it out in luxury yachts, and frontline key workers are castigated for using their local parks. It's not just accidental or incompetence. It is the result of the now discredited policy of herd immunity, which meant government did virtually nothing in February to prepare for the virus. It could have stockpiled PPE, it could have ramped up testing facilities. It put the interests of big business above people's safety. Boris Johnson, in the speech in February, made it clear how he planned, in the face of the coronavirus, to champion the rights of business to make money. And we have a health and social care system on its knees after years of cuts, privatisation and austerity. The same Tory ministers who now clap the National Health Service and the workers working for it cheered when a pay rise for nurses was defeated in Parliament a few years ago. We cannot trust Boris Johnson's government to put our safety first. Despite government announcements, we're already beginning to see an unofficial easing of the lockdown for big business. Many non-essential construction sites never shut down in the first place, and more are planning to open up. Car makers are also planning to restart production. On building sites and many factories, it's very difficult to implement social distancing. Workers and trade unionists must fight now in the coming months and years to make safety the #1 consideration. That's why it's right when postal workers walk out when there is insufficient PPE. That's why it's right when health and social care staff refuse to work unless there is adequate PPE. Workers know their jobs better than the bosses and better than politicians. That means workers must lead on risk assessment and safety planning. Section 44 of the Employment Rights Act 1996 enshrines in law the right of every worker not to put themselves in danger at work. In every workplace, and that includes people working from home, we need workers who will stand up and organise with their colleagues to fight for all our health and safety. If it is not safe, we need to make it safe or shut it down. We need to revitalise the trade union movement and build strong workplace organisation to keep us safe. So, no rushed or premature relaxation of the lockdown and social distancing. To do that means we need full pay to all workers who can't work, including self-employed workers, people on 0 hours contracts, and those not getting statutory sick pay, so they are not forced to work in danger because of poverty. So today, with great sadness and respect, we remember the dead, all those who've died, their families and their workmates. But we must also fight for the living with all our strength to protect as many people and as many lives as we can as we go forward. Everyone agrees there is no going back to business as usual. COVID-19 changes everything, but how it changes the way we live and die is down to us. Do we want to live in a world dominated by the profits and the interests of big business with increased authoritarianism? Or do we want to live in a world that puts safety first, based on caring, based on humanity, and based on cooperation? We must shape the future now. We must put people before profit. We have a world to win.
Thank you very much, John. Very well said, and thanks to John, Chair of Portsmouth Trades Council, also Chair of our Portsmouth City Unison branch, and key activist in the South Coast Coronavirus Action Committee, and instrumental in this rally today. So thanks very much, John. We're now going to invite other people to speak. If anybody would like to speak, if you could raise your virtual hand by going to participants, find your name and raise hand. If you can't do that, then raise your real life hand and I'll try and spot you. We've Catherine Remington's asked to speak and Amanda Martin. So I'll call Catherine first. I'll unmute you shortly, and then after Catherine, we'll hear from Amanda. Thank you. You're unmuted, Catherine.
Thanks, Mark. Just thank you, John. A wonderful rallying. You know, don't know what to say. A wonderful speech there, very moving. So I'm Catherine Remington, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Solent branch of WASPI, which is the Women Against State Pension Inequality. Those are the women born in the 1950s who had to wait varying lengths of time for their pensions. So on International Workers' Memorial Day, we would like to remember all of the WASPI women victims of state pension injustice who have died before receiving their pension. And those who continue to work, and often in high-risk jobs during the COVID-19 health emergency. Many of these women are in poor health themselves, but receive no state support and work to survive. One of our members, Janet, finally reached state pension age at the beginning of March. She retired, but then decided to find a part-time job to improve her living standards. Subsequently, she contracted COVID-19 just after Easter, and had to be admitted to QA hospital. In her own words, she has been to the brink and back. Janet is absolutely full of praise to the NHS and the amazing QA hospital staff who enabled her to pull through. Now, Janet survived, but many women won't. So although WASPI is campaigning for fair transitional arrangements for all 1950s women, it has taken the extraordinary step of asking the government for concessions for those most in need in the light of this shortfall as a short-term measure. And this includes asking that pension credit be paid and that women who are due to get their pension this year get it now. We hope that our politicians are listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for raising pension injustice. And I'll now call Amanda Martin from the NEU. Amanda, you're unmuted. Oh, no, now you are.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining. Michael Issett, primary teacher, kind and caring man. Rabbi Anna Pinter, principal of Yesterday Girls School. Jerry McHugh, principal teacher of maths, inspiring to every pupil. Kate Fox, much loved literacy teacher. Emma Clark, brilliant science teacher. Indra Sen, highly regarded maths teacher and union rep. Carol Flynn, learning mentor and heart and soul of the school. Wendy Jacobs, dedicated primary head. Anne Pittman, primary teacher and sports coach. Dr. Louisa Rickmand, inspirational English teacher. And 21-year-old nursery school worker, Kate Horn. All of those people have died in the last few weeks because of COVID-19. All of those people are the key workers that John talked about when he said those moving words in his speech. All of those people are helping to keep our country safe and have put their own and their own families' lives at risk. Every day, key workers go to work to put our country first, many times before their own family. As trade unions, it is our job to defend those people and to make sure they have the necessary equipment, testing, and in the case of education, an absolute modelling before we even think about going back. We cannot contemplate this country returning to anything that was normal in the first place, let alone going back, without the drop in numbers of cases and without the drop of deaths. My trade union has been working hard, and since the 13th of March, when school lockdown was announced by the government with very little other detail, they have made sure that we are protecting lives of the people in this country and allowing our schools to be open for the vulnerable and for the key worker children. As John said, if we hadn't had 10 years of austerity, we would not be on our knees in the way we have. But this crisis has shown who the true key workers are in our country, and we can never go back. We must fight for them, and we must fight for those in the names of those 11 people that I listed. My own union are organising and getting more and more health and safety reps as part of our International Workers' Memorial Day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So now Dave Fish has indicated to speak. Dave, you're unmuted.
Yeah, really taking up points Amanda made, taking up points that John made. How do we get out of this? What do we learn from it? First of all, we learn how awful the Tories are. The Tories are still, many of them, arguing that we should get back to work carelessly, without concern for safety and so on, simply in order to make profits for them. We absolutely have to reject that part of the argument. Secondly, what can we learn positively? Firstly, that people are not selfish and horrible. We've got key workers who are heroes by the million, real heroes. We've got people that come out every Thursday and actually enjoy making a fuss of them in solidarity and so on. People are not horrible, selfish people who will never bring about a good society. People do actually want that. Thirdly, don't give all this money to capitalist companies. Today, P&O actually asked for £250 million to keep going, which of course is actually what they've paid out today to their shareholders, exactly the same amount. So the government gives them money, they send it straight out to the shareholders. That's great. But they claim, and many other people, Richard Branson living on his island has claimed that, oh, well, the economy will collapse unless you support these big companies with this huge amount of money. Of course it won't. The fact of the matter is that when we come out of this problem, all the P&O boats will still be there. The crews will still be there. They will still know how to sail them and so on and so forth. The economy won't have collapsed. P&O won't have collapsed, might have collapsed, but the economy certainly won't have done that. And to be honest, as socialists, if we can't see the possibilities there, we're pretty blind, and I'm sure everyone who's watching today can. But we need to make that point. Lastly, I think, and this is a really important point that should be made now, absolutely, and it's got to be made in Parliament, and it's got to be made by Keir Starmer and Labour and so on and so forth, and that is we cannot come out of this, we cannot even consider it going straight back into austerity. One, because it will be bloody daft. Tories tell us that things are really bad economically, so the first thing they do is, oh, when we come out of this, we're not going to spend any money. Tories tell us that the NHS is important and everyone who does it is heroic. What are they going to do under austerity? Cut the NHS. Tories are asking schools to open early, sometimes without safety and so on and so forth. What are they going to do? Bring back austerity, cut education budgets. It has to be made absolutely clear, and it has to be made in the hardest way possible now, that it doesn't make sense, and we are not willing to come out of this and go straight back into austerity again. Thank you. Those are the points that I want to make, and I think that's a big programme for us as socialists, and I think today is one of those occasions when we're doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, and thanks to everybody who's spoken. I don't think I can see anybody else indicating. If anybody else did want to speak before we close the rally, oh, sorry, I have Penny Foskett from the NEU, but I've also, on my screen, John is frozen. I think we were going to go to John back at the Workers' Memorial to close the rally, but I'm not sure whether we can hear from John. And I don't know, Jenny, is John frozen on your screen?
Yeah,
Oh. Oh yeah, John is with us. Great. Okay, so sorry, I'll call Penny to speak first. If anybody else would like to speak, please do indicate now, and then we'll get you in before we go back to John to close the rally. Penny, you're unmuted.
Right, one of the things that's become very evident when we look at the pictures, particularly of the people who've died, is the huge number of people from various ethnic groups who've died. They are often absolutely at the front of the kind of jobs where people have been really at risk. So they've been, I think the first 10 doctors who died were BME. A huge percentage of the NHS staff who've died are from BME backgrounds. The bus drivers who've died, I think a high proportion of them are from migrant backgrounds. and so on and so on. And it's becoming very clear that this is a crisis for all workers, for all people in Britain, but it's particularly a crisis for the BME community, who are suffering really disproportionately for a variety of reasons, but not least austerity, poverty, and racism, discrimination at work. So I think this is a really big issue, and it's one that's covered tonight in the Stand Up to Racism Facebook event, when there's going to be Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn and Roger Mackenzie speaking from Unison, talking about this issue. But really important, we have a Stand Up to Racism in Portsmouth, have a meeting about this next Sunday, where we're very pleased that Amanda Martin, who's already spoken, is going to be speaking. It's 2 o'clock next Sunday afternoon, and that will be a Zoom meeting. And if you don't already know about that and would like to find out more about it, if you could email, it's quite a straightforward email, Stand Up to Racism Portsmouth, all lowercase, no space, @gmail.com, and I will send you details of the meeting and the protocol. So I'd be very pleased to see anyone there. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Penny. And people can also find Portsmouth Stand Up to Racism on Facebook, and the National Stand Up to Racism event tonight at 7 will be live on Facebook Live on Stand Up to Racism's UK Facebook page. I've got Cal Corkery indicating to speak, so I'll bring Cal in now. Cal, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Mark. So my name's Cal Corkery. I'm a Labour councillor in Portsmouth. I'm also a Unison Steward. I just wanted to start, obviously, by paying respects to all those that have passed recently from coronavirus, particularly the people that have died kind of in their workplaces, and the health and social care workers. I was looking up the statistics this morning, and there's 140 health and social care workers, and obviously those are the ones that are known. I'm sure the real figure is much more in advance of that. And as was mentioned earlier, there's been a significant and disproportionate rate of people from BAME backgrounds that have passed from the illness. And it may well prove kind of in time that there was some medical grounds for that, but we can't ignore the socio and kind of economic factors around that. People from minority backgrounds are much more likely to be involved in precarious work, in the delivery of public services and other kind of key worker roles at the front line. So they're really at the front line, kind of at risk from this. Now, locally, kind of one of the things that we've obviously been particularly concerned around is around care homes and home care services, where people are providing that personal care, getting very close to often vulnerable people, and quite often found without the sort of adequate PPE. I know there was an article in the news last week from an anonymous worker in a care home who was really kind of worried about the fact that they weren't being given appropriate protection, only being given one mask for a whole shift, and even then having to fight for it, which just isn't good enough. For me, one of the main issues here is that the national guidance is incredibly weak. It's incredibly weak, and it's so weak that it means that people that should be wearing the equipment aren't being made to. And that then allows the decision makers to step back and say, well, we provided adequate PPE in accordance with the guidance, but we all know the guidance isn't good enough. So that needs looking at and kind of tightening up much more strongly. I think if we can start to look forward into the future, that the main questions for me are, how are key workers going to be treated and appreciated in future? Are we going to resort back to a situation where people are struggling for a living wage, where people are having their pensions attacked and their terms and conditions downgraded year to year? Or are we going to have key workers properly appreciated and respected in the way that they should be? So I'll just end with a quote. I think this was a quote actually from a right-wing political advisor in America at the time of the financial crisis in 2008. And that was, never let a serious crisis go to waste. And obviously they were using this in the context of trying to drive forward neoliberal reforms in response to the crisis. But I think that is a quote that maybe we should take up and say, we're never going to let this serious crisis go to waste. And what we're going to make come out of it is a better deal for workers, and a deal that ensures that people are working in safe environments where they're properly respected. and properly paid. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal, and thanks to everybody for very moving and important contributions. I think time-wise, we might need to go to John to close the rally. Sorry, I've got Chris indicating to speak. And Chris, I know, is a health and safety rep. So, Chris, I'll bring you in briefly, and then John, if we can come to you to close the rally. But as I said, if people want to continue discussions, we could perhaps keep the Zoom meeting open as well for people to do that. Chris, you're unmuted.
Okay, thanks. And very quickly, yes, just really to make the point that I think in the UK at least, one of the backgrounds to health and safety generally that presents a problem for safety at work is the rollback of enforcement by the agencies that are charged with doing that, notably the Health and Safety Executive, and then the other wing of safety enforcement, which are local authority environmental health services. And we've seen those have their funding cut, and we've seen them have their briefs reduced as well into more guidance and advisory roles rather than proactively inspecting places. So I think that is also a point that needs to be rectified by governments in the future, and is a point for us to campaign on. And secondly, very quickly as well, that just really wondering about the access to justice that people may struggle with in terms of the families and those people surviving loved ones who have lost their lives in this crisis. Sadly, you know, lots of media sort of recognition in terms of, you know, whether they're bus drivers or health workers or whatever. But the reality is, I think if people are actually trying to challenge the safety provisions that were made for their loved ones, I think history is showing that they will face quite an arduous struggle, you know, in the courts and you know, in trying to establish that with the employers, which is another area where you know, trade unions and safety campaigns have an important role in supporting those people sustain themselves through that process of accessing justice. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for raising that's an important point and something for us to campaign on and be involved in. John, if you're ready, we'll come back to you to close the rally. So back to John Woods. You're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. I'm walking back. I try to shelter under the tree because it's been a bit intense, the rain down here. I wanted to thank all the speakers. I think it's been a really good rally, and I think actually we've had about as many people here today, sometimes as we had in previous years. So actually, it's been a really good response, and people have said some really important things. And I just want to, you know, thank everybody for who's made this what I think has been a very successful, if unusual, Workers' Memorial Day. I just want to say a few things as a matter of closure. One is I wanted to make sure we try and get the posters in. And we might want to do a little show of posters at the end. The other thing I wanted to say is that clearly it's been very difficult for trade unions to do our normal meetings. Clearly it's very difficult to demonstrate and those sorts of things. However, we have to find ways to tackle that in this current climate. And what we've done in Portsmouth is using the Zoom app, we've had, because Trades Council couldn't meet, we formed an informal network of trade unionists across the city and including in Southampton as well. And we called it the South Coast Coronavirus Action Committee. And our next meeting is on Thursday, the 7th of May at 7:30 on this same Zoom ID. So this is the Zoom ID. So people are very welcome to join in. It's a chance to share ideas, good advice to people, but also it's a chance to campaign. And I think one of the things I was really pleased that Cal mentioned it. Cal and I particularly did a press release which got the coverage around the local residential worker and the lack of PPE, and that got quite a bit of coverage. I did an interview on Radio Solent on Friday morning as a result of that, and Cal was quoted in the paper, and quite rightly, we're having to fight this idea that somehow we all have to be uncritical of what's going on, that we just simply go like lambs to the slaughter and simply accept that the government has got our best interests in heart. While we absolutely endorse the lockdown, as people have said, and want to keep safety, it doesn't mean we can't be critical of what's going on and hold people to account. And therefore, we need to think about campaigning. I know some places they've had demonstrations socially distanced, but nevertheless, small numbers of people outside hospitals to campaign for PPE, and I think that's what we need to do. So the South Coast Coronavirus Action Committee will be meeting at 7:30 Thursday the 7th of May on this Zoom app. Lastly, I just want to say thanks everyone once again to coming. There's a picture of the war memorial, the workers' memorial here, and the flowers. And I'm going to cycle home now. If you want to carry on the discussion, please do. All the best. As we say, remember the dead, fight for the living. Solidarity, comrades.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks again for braving the rain and for speaking on that. Really important. But as John suggested, I think it would be a really good idea if we could now put our posters up. Thanks, Michelle's shared hers across the screen. I think everybody can see that. But if we could maybe now, if Jenny could go to the gallery view, I think Michelle may need to stop sharing her screen, and then thanks, Michelle, great poster. If anybody else has a homemade poster, perhaps we can all raise those and Jenny can get them on gallery view. If you don't have a poster, you might want to raise a fist in solidarity with all the workers being put at risk by the Tories and all the workers who lost their lives, sadly. So if we have a moment now, if everybody can get their posters up on the screen, and we'll try and, can we get a still shot of that, Jenny? I don't know if we can get a screenshot, or if we just take a still. Jenny, fortunately, has a similar expert with, so we'll be able to get a shot of the screen. Thanks, Jenny. And thanks to everybody who's been part of this meeting. It's a really important day every year, this day even more so. Thanks to everybody for bringing solidarity with workers around the world, facing the risk at work and fighting for a better world where workers won't be risking their lives